Hello, hello. Welcome to CH Budget Brews. I'm Tim, and tonight I'm joined by my friend Cricket from the Grixis Mean Girls Discord. He's also one of the deck helpers on the Budget Brews Discord. Say hello, Cricket.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
So, what? So since you're from the Grixis Mean Girls Discord, any clue what we might be discussing tonight?
Ooh, that's a really tough question, Timmy. Maybe Kess?
Maybe. So you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? Kind of, how did you get into playing Kess, or what's your background in CEDH? And
So I started playing EDH probably about 10 years ago, and it was super casual. I had 100 green cards, and that was the deck. And, it's just as time went on, I started getting better. I started learning things. And then I got a buddy of mine actually introduced me to like the content from the Lab Maniacs.
okay,
And that was back when Dan was doing his budget series that he was doing. And I saw Kess and I'm like, hey, I have that pre-con. I have that card. Let me try building it and see what happens. And it just kind of evolved from there. So I've been playing CDH probably for about 3 or 4 years now. And it's just been like this maelstrom of fun and building. And now I just never know what deck to build next.
I know the feeling. I got way too many. You saw my you saw my Mox field on the way in. You don't even want to see what my tapped out looks like, because that's from like all the way back from like 2012.
Oh, the website that shall not be named.
Yes. This is a big improvement. Everybody, if you're not on Moxfield yet, Harry's awesome. I recommend.
Harry Moxfield, according to Into the North.
Yes, Harry Moxfield, according to Into the North. And then you and I met because of obviously the budget Kess list that I kind of promote, shill, some people like to call it, but it got featured a couple years ago on I guess a year and a half ago on a Playing with Power video and such. So maybe we should just dive on in, unless there's kind of get going.
I'm going to shamelessly plug the Grixis Mean Girls server real quick. We do wear red on Wednesdays, and we have definitely made fetch happen. So if there's any of the Grixis commanders that anybody's interested, definitely check us out. We have a channel for all of them, and there's always people talking about something. I know Inala is super big with Strixhaven coming out, so.
It is. And you know how you guys made fetch happen? Scalding Tarn. Polluted Delta.
There it is.
Yeah. Oh, don't worry. I was going to let you plug the Grixis Mean Girl Discord at the end. And we're going to put it in the show
out of the way.
Yeah, no, totally. And then I'm going to be, usually at the end, I'm like, hey, where can people, interact with you and all that. So, all right. So anybody who's not familiar with Kess is just a 3/4 wizard for a black, a red, and a blue, and a colorless. It's a 3/4 flyer. Most of that's not relevant. It's the block of text below flying that's really relevant. Is that during each of your turns, you may cast a instant or sorcery card from your graveyard for its mana cost, and then you exile it. So one of the reasons why I initially brewed Kess as a budget deck, probably much like you, other than just having the precon already, was that it allowed me to set up Consult very easily. Like, I could just play a Demonic Tutor and then replay Demonic Tutor, and I have my cards. Or I could play Consult, and then on my turn, at opponent's end step, and then on my turn, play Consult, name Oracle, get my Oracle, then on my turn, play Oracle, and then flashback Consult. Of course, at that time, it was either Jace or Labman. So I felt that it was like a really... Plus, overall, it's a pretty strong... Grixis is pretty strong colors. So that was kind of the basics with mine. And I have maintained mine at around that $500, which we'll get to a little bit later. And I will definitely admit, I don't know about you, Cricket, is that I have noticed over the last year or so that I've had to kind of keep paring the list down to maintain it at that close to that $500 mark
Yeah,
for what
we're
it is.
definitely seeing a huge spike in getting into the
Yeah.
format, especially from a budget perspective. A lot of the good budget cards are no longer not so budget, and a lot of that is, they haven't had reprints in a long time, or they can't have reprints, and it's just also all this kind of like money that's kind
Yep.
of been around, and people are like, hey, I suddenly got $1,400. Let me spend it on a whole bunch of Magic cards.
Right. And I got nowhere to go. And the only thing we can do is play Commander over webcam or over a digital platform. So let's buy in. Kind of a big thing.
Exactly.
So I think a lot of people are relatively familiar with my list. So I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of move forward to the next one because I'd rather spend a little more time talking about yours. To be honest, mine's not that exciting. Like it just does Kess things, and there's not really much to talk about on it, at least for now. Um, so when we get over to your list does deviate from mine a little bit. First off, most notably, it's about $50 more expensive, um, and it looks like that $50 is in. No, you got Dockside. I think you got a couple more fetch lands than no, you don't have those either. So why don't you just go ahead and tell us a little bit about your list before I just sit here and ramble for 3 minutes like I'm an idiot.
So my list, it has the core combos. Obviously, it's got the consult, the pact with Oracle. It also
Mm-hmm.
includes Underworld Breach
Yep.
and Brain. Oh, it doesn't actually have Brain Freeze. I forgot to add that in. But
It's
now that
okay.
that's
You can
something that you
update
can
it.
do at Lotus Petal.
You can update it right now, and I'll just hit refresh.
Oh yeah, there we go. That's a brilliant idea. Maybe I'll
While
take
we're
out
thinking
something
about it.
because I mean, I hate to admit it, Brain Freeze is a really good and a really strong combo, especially at a budget level where you can do it with something as simple as Lotus Petal.
Really? Okay, because I have found to the contrary actually, where I basically have just kind of left mine as more of the older style, like Redshift mid range list that is a little more controlly and then just literally just tries to execute console Oracle console Labman. I mean, I technically have Underworld Breach on my list, and I do have Brain Freeze, but and I do have Lotus Puddle, but like as far as my play patterns are concerned, I'm really much more invested in executing A plus B. So how have you found the Brain Freeze with Lotus Petal Breach kind of budgetized version to work overall?
So it's obviously nowhere near as fast as in its budgetless counterpart,
Mm-hmm.
but it's one more piece than what we're already including because we're already going to have Lotus Petal, we're already going to have Breach, so now we're just throwing
Yep.
in Brain Freeze. And it's just Brain Freeze is good when you're trying to get things into your graveyard to cast with Kess, so you kind of look at it as a draw spell,
Okay.
especially if you can get some Storm going, which is not unusual for us. Most people will kind of let you sit there and kind of spin your wheels a bit, cast a couple spells because they're looking for you to cast that consult or they're looking for you to cast some part of your combo, so they'll hold off their interaction till that point.
True. True. Very much. Yeah. Another notable difference between your list and my list is that you're running Mirror Maid.
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of copy artifact, just because at least in my meta, I found that my opponents have a lot of targets for me. And what's great about Mirror Maid is it also copies one of my absolute favorite spells that I wish I could play in this deck, but obviously we don't have white, and that's Smothering Tithe.
Yeah. I love playing Smothering Tithe. I mean, we did kind of get a Smothering Tithe in the form of Hull Breacher,
True, we
but it's
did.
definitely I said kind of.
But why not have two?
Right. No. I get you. I'm just saying, like, it's like kinda. It's really just. So, do you actually play Mirror Maid in your fully powered list, or do you just play Copy Artifact?
I just play copy artifact.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I mean, like sometimes, like, because I use Mirror Maid in like Scepter builds because it acts as the same thing as Copy Artifact. It gives me that second Scepter that I need, and then also I can just copy whatever with it. So that's kind of nice. Um, and it kind of actually looks like now that I've been kind of going over the list. I mean, your list definitely is playing. You're playing Whispering Madness. I'm not really playing that. It looks like you're playing Night's Whisper. I kind of just went with like a little more of the traditional style, like. But I did know. Okay, you are playing Misdirection. Okay, so here's kind of the good one. So since I played that game, since I went down to the meetup with Playing with Power, and I sent them my deck list, and they kept it like off my Mox field. So I have a static version of it, which is kind of nice. And ironically, the list that I played. Okay, so it's also $2,000, but it is not $2,000. We're gonna fix that right now.
Soul Ring.
Yeah, it's that Soul Ring. Come on, Harry. Come on, you're killing me with that. Not really. That's mostly a joke. So the difference between my list that I keep current and the list that I played in November of 2019 is about $300.
That right there is a perfect example of what's going on with the market.
Yeah. Like I had Mana Vault on my list. I had Chromox, and they weren't hard to fit in. I had like Pact of Negation in my list. So like I had more free interaction. I had what else? I had Rhystic Study Necropotence in my list at the time. Plunge
Probably
in the Darkness.
Mystic Confluence.
Yep. Mystic Confluence. Yep. I had not only did I have Dark Petition, but I also had Gamble, Demonic Tutor, Mystical Tutor, Limdal's Vault. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there was definitely, like, I definitely, like, a power creep, like, that happened, like, from a budget perspective. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I guess here's the next question. Like, if you're wanting to, like, kind of start out at, like, the base, like, the website list or what you guys have featured on the Mean Girls server for Kess, and you kind of wanted to start building your way up because you're in an environment where you can't proxy for whatever reason, or you just want to paper your list out even though you have proxied, kind of where would you, like, what directions do you think, like, you would want to start with? Because we'll just start with your list. Like, if you were just to take your list and let's say you wanted to start jumping it from its current price of 600 and some change up to really start to kind of start optimizing it, like, what are some of the first key purchases you think you should do?
So from my perspective, I think the best place to always start is card advantage, right? All your draw engines, all your cards that are going to put more cards in your hand, because historically, the person who wins a game is the person who draws the most cards and has the most mana.
Okay.
And so you want to see things like Rhystic Study. You want to see things like, let me go over to my list.
Because you have Remora and Potence, Necropotence. You do not have Rhystic Study in your list. You have Whispering Madness, Windfall, Sleight of Hand, Ponder Preordain, Night's Whisper, Get Probe. You have Adnaz, obviously.
Yeah. So the wheels are a big one. Wheel of Misfortune.
That's a good include, yeah.
That's more for its synergy too with Hull Breacher or Notion Thief if you're running it.
Yep.
And also, so I'm weird. In my full power list, I actually am testing out the Shadow Bag.
Yeah. We'll get to that. Save that for later. We're getting there. We're working our way over. We're working our way across the tabs.
But yeah, just the more card draw you can fit into your deck, the better it's going to be. It'll make you more consistent, and I think that's where budget decks struggle is with their consistency.
They can, but you can get a lot of cheap cantrips to help smooth that out. So, like, for me personally, like, if I was to go from my 500 list, my 550 list, and your $600 list, and then start to jump up, what I actually personally would want to do is I would want to add in the Rhystic Study. I would want to make sure I have Necropotence in there. I would want to make sure I have Remora in there. But I also would want to start getting Mana Crypt in, Mana Vault in, Chromox. Like, I personally would probably buy Mana Crypt, Mana Vault, and Chromox first. I would lean towards getting the some more fast mana, honestly, to help increase the speed of the deck. So that way I probably put in an Ancient Tomb and like a Gemstone Caverns. Like, those are probably like the first 5 cards I would buy. Because
speaking of Gemstone, it's getting a reprint, so it should be a lot cheaper.
Thank God, I might actually be able to add it to the mana base template finally. At least put it in the suggested, the little, considering box. But like, that's kind of where I would go first, is because I want to get some of those basically non-reserve list, lower. I won't say lower, but like those mid-price like CDH staples, and I would want to get them in here. Because one of the things that I have always found playing this list, and like I've played these lists against like on the Nexus, and I've played them on Play 88, and I've played them at like different like Command Fests. I've played them a couple of times at like Grand Prix, like in the in the casual area, or at LGSs and stuff like that, like against people who knew what they were playing against and such and such. And when I've played against like the fully powered lists, and even like when I've played against like I hate using the term, but it's kind of the common colloquial, is like the LGS meta, where like not everybody's playing like every bell and whistle. They're playing what they got, or most of them, but not all of them. Is that where the deck seems to suffer is that it's just not fast enough. And it can't get off the ground, so it's always behind. So like by adding things like Ancient Tomb and trying to add those rocks that can make 2 colorless mana can help you play your other 2 CMC rocks faster. Like Mox Opal would be another one I would include too, but that's just me.
Right. That would be that is my second priority, or at least like that's the next thing I start looking at too, is then how do we get our super impressive turn 1 and turn 2 plays, and that's adding in all this fast mana.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and like Jessica's Will is a good one to have. Like it's nice.
I definitely like J-Will in a budget perspective. It's just a lot of red mana.
It is. It's $9 too, so it's not like super cheap, but it's available.
Right. It's another it's another ritual.
Yeah.
Rituals.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, it's either 3 mana draw 3 or 3 mana make anywhere from 4 to 7 mana. All right. So now we've kind of compared like our starting budget list to kind of, and talked about like the price creeping a little bit. So now I've got 2 different variants of a 1K budget Kess. So here, this is kind of where like I essentially double the price of the list, But at this point, I'm able to start putting in like Force of Negation. I'm able to start putting in things like Dark Confidant. I'm able to put in like more fast mana, more free interaction, and then in the mid-range list, it tends to be like rocks and interaction kind of are the are where I really start to kind of focus. Whereas like if you look at a storm list, I'm running close to the same amount of free interaction, but I've more focused on the faster mana and more tutors to get there. You know what I mean?
Right,
So
absolutely.
yeah, and there's not and like even in my storm version, I even went as far as to pull Necropotence out just to like have better tutors and better fast mana to be able to hit that Adnos better. Um, so, and then kind of next, we're kind of just move on to your list because we can talk about budget upgrades all day and kind of go around and around and well, like we'll get kind of drift back to that in a minute. So this is your list, Cricket, and so why don't you kind of tell us where your list kind of deviates from the more stock, I guess you could say more stock guest list.
So Redshift and Wedge have kind of always been like the big names in Kess when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
mid range, which is where I'd like to kind of categorize my deck. I'm not a huge fan of that, like super fast, drop all my cards and hope nobody interacts with it, or at least have some small amount of interaction to stop them from countering my win. I prefer to do the
Mm-hmm.
long game. So already on mid range, but I'm do include some of that storm stuff. So like I have Simeon Spirit
Yeah.
Guide to help smooth out my turns where I've just ad naused and maybe I don't have any lands untapped, but I do need to cast my Soul Ring so I can cast my Signet so I can start that chain of mana.
Right.
I also am testing Cobble's Shadow Bag
Yeah, how's that
kind of
working for
combo
you?
line. So when I can get Bone Miser out, it's actually really nice because it gives me an instant speed win with Oracle.
All right, so Bone Miser, for everybody at home who doesn't know, is a 4/4 for 5 that whenever it basically does exactly what Waste Not does, where you discard a non-creature, you draw a card, discard a land, you get 2 black, you discard a creature, you get a zombie. So how does this work for an instant speed line? Because I'm actually not 100% familiar with it, to be honest.
So it's actually there's a couple of different pieces to this. The primary pieces are Bone Miser, and then what you're looking for is Shallow Grave. So essentially, it uses the end step cleanup, and this works beautifully, especially if you have Necropotence out, right? Because
Okay.
Necropotence, you get your cards right.
Uh-huh.
In most cases, you're looking for bigger than your normal hand size.
Yep.
So when you go to your cleanup step and you start to discard, you start getting all this stuff from Bone Miser, right?
Right.
So you're getting your mana, you're getting your card draw, and
Mm-hmm.
then what you can do is if you find it in those card draws, is you cast Shadow of the Grave, which gets all those cards back before they get exiled, and then you just start the process over again, and you just try to keep doing that as long as possible until you can find Shallow Grave and Thassa's Oracle.
Right, because you put the trigger on the stack from the Necropotence, and then you get your Bone Miser triggers as well, and then you stack them in a way to where the Bone Miser ones resolve first, then your Necropotence triggers never resolve until you're done doing all of the shenanigans.
Right.
Essentially.
And so once you've gotten Shallow Grave and Oracle, you discard Oracle during your final cleanup, and with all that black mana you've made with Miser, you can then cast Shallow Grave to put Oracle onto the field. And usually by that point, you've either hit Consult or you've decked yourself, just from all the draw triggers.
Right. Now, and one of the Bone Miser is not a maze, so do be careful.
Right.
Watch out for that. You can yeet yourself. People like to do, when Kess gets popular, everybody likes to start packing Coliseums because they think they're going to get you, even though it's in play and you can count to 7.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can count to 7.
I mean, you know how many, I'm just saying, like, you can count how many cards are in somebody's graveyard. It's, I don't know, it's like super telegraphed, but there we are. People still like to try. And, you know, and so is there actually like, now where's the bag part come into this? Because I don't see bag of holding in your list. I see.
So Bag of Holding serves the same function that Shadow of the Grave does. So the whole thing is getting those cards you've discarded back into your hand so you can keep the process going.
So, okay, so you're running the Bone Miser combo that pairs with Bag of Holding, but you're not actually running Bag of Holding.
Right, and that's more of a slot thing. I just wasn't sure how many slots I wanted to devote to this just yet until I tested it. Because the biggest piece of this is Bone Miser, and I mean, he's got a pretty hefty mana cost. He's 5. So getting that out.
Let's be honest. He costs 1 black and 5 life, right? Doesn't he?
More or less.
I'm sorry. I'm making funny eyes right now. It's just I'm playing, man. That's all. So yeah, and actually, and how's this been working out for you? Has it been performing pretty well, or?
I've liked it when I've had it, but there have definitely been some times where Bone Miser just kind of sits in my hand and does nothing.
Okay. He seems like he might be better if like you play against like more wheels, like if you're in a higher density of wheels, like in your meta, because all of your opponents are going to be forcing you to discard and draw and discard and draw. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. And every time you discard, especially in this deck, because we have at least in my list, I have 9 creatures and 29 lands. So my chances of discarding a non-creature card are way higher than anything else.
Yeah. For the most part, you're basically going to be drawing cards and making mana. And not to mention, you already run three of the 4 best wheels in Commander. The only thing you're not on that traditionally is run is Twister. But honestly, most of the time I don't even play it in Kess either, just because like I like to paper my lists out. So having it like be fully papered is nice because I don't have to worry about like somebody getting salty. Which, ironically, since COVID, because everybody's playing on webcam now, the whole proxy thing has gotten like way like easier to do than it used to, which is nice.
Yeah, it's taking the world by storm, so to speak.
Yeah. I see what you did there. That was good. So, is there anything else that you wanted to kind of go over about your personal list, or shall we kind of discuss the core?
I think we can move on to the core now, because I mean, other than the Bone Miser thing, it's a pretty stock list. From the mid-range side. I am not on Grinding Station. I know that it's very popular right now.
I'm with you, man. I don't believe the hype on that one.
It's good where it's good. A lot of people have had success with it. I just don't personally like it.
I'm playing blue. I don't need it. Like, I'll play it in court, like in my Sans Blue list, but like I find that it's not necessary. It's kind of overkill, personally. All right. So let's move on to the core. So I'm going to switch views here so that we can kind of get a better look at cards. All right. So this is the Consult Kess core list. This is kind of curated by you and Wedge and Cole, I believe. Okay. The name was slightly different, so I didn't want to assume. So why don't you go ahead and just kind of work your way down from the top. Creatures, sorceries, instants, and then we can kind of go over like the core list a little bit if you'd like, because I actually like these core lists. I think they're really great. They give people like a nice variety and ability to customize their lists.
Right, because what you're looking at with these core lists is these are the cards to play. 100% full stop. Like, put these in your list. But then
Right.
it gives you, you know, like this one, the core list is 86. So you have 14 cards that you can customize the deck to your taste with. I mean, that's huge when it comes to CDH.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's 14. I mean, that's almost a whole. Shit, you put 5 cards in a list and you got a whole new archetype in CDH.
Exactly. So
You
I
know.
think it gives you a lot of like avenues to explore. And again, this is tailored more for the mid-range style. So
Yep.
keep that in mind as I'm listing these cards. Just this is with mid-range in mind. So for creatures, we're looking at Dark Confidant. And, you know, he's great draw engine there.
Yep.
Dockside for mana. Gilded Drake. Hull Breacher, obviously. JVP is on this list mainly
Yeah.
because of his looting, which feeds Breach, but
Okay.
also because he's a mini Kess when you flip him.
Right, because he gives you the flashback. And inadvertently, if you're on the grind plan, he can help blank Timnas.
There you go.
Because you have a 3/4 blocker, and then you can just give a creature -2, -0. And then, you know, it helps. I'm not saying it's perfect, but, you know.
I mean, every little bit helps when it comes to
Yep.
Timna.
Right. And then we got Hull Breacher next, right?
Yep. Hull Breacher for our mana. That goes without saying. Opposition Agent. I haven't seen too much of this card, honestly, which is very surprising to me.
Okay. I see it a lot.
But it is definitely, like, just from the card text alone, like, it's another Praetor's Grasp, basically.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of... I like it. I've seen a lot of people using it to, like, snag fetch lands from people early game to kind of tempo them and stuff like that. And then we have the obvious McObvious Thassa's Oracle there.
Yeah, if you don't have that in your deck, I'm not sure what you're doing with your life at this point.
Yeah. I personally like to run Oracle and Labman.
So there's nothing wrong with density, right? The more density, the better.
Well, so for me, I run Labman in a lot of my lists because I oftentimes find that the play patterns of the people I play against, Labman actually is a better way to finish the game than Oracle. Because, like, a lot of people like to do the thing with Colosseum, or they'll pack Stifle effects for some unknown reason. Or things that will make you, like, some other types of draws. And Oracle's ETB trigger, while cleaner in a vacuum, actually being able to pivot to the Labman kind of disrupts their plan, and then they don't know what to do.
Right. And I will say, like, as time has gone on, the interaction suite, despite the creation of Oracle, has stemmed further and further away from interaction that can interact with creatures.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty nice. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to some sorceries. I mean, I think most of them are pretty obvious. Deluge,
Yeah,
Jogswill, Wheels, yeah.
Tutors, Wheels.
Yeah. So,
the two good sorcery speed cantrips, like the two primary ones.
Yep. So here's something I noticed from your list, and I wanted to get a thought on it. So you're not packing Imperial Seal in your list either, if I remember correctly. Maybe double check. Oh no, you are. I lied. Sorry, audience. I thought you were not. I was like, is there a reason? So
now you were right about that for maybe like the last month. It's actually a reach in the choir, and like you, I prefer to have my list in paper. Like that's just my personal thing. Like I don't care if you play with proxies. I want to own the cards.
I would like you, like, unless your deck is really like at the point where it's like I'm missing Twister or I'm missing Imp Seal and like that's it. Like, you know, like I would rather play against, fully powered decks versus not. I just happen to own like every damn card under the sun, so it kind of is a loophole for me. So because I was actually kind of I so recently I've been kind of coming across this little bit of a hot take, where I actually haven't been super happy with MSeal. Not to say that it's not good. Do not get me wrong. Like, it is a 1 mana, top of your library tutor, but it's sorcery speed. And I have been finding that a sorcery speed tutor that's to the top of the library has not been performing as well as it used to, because I usually have to have card velocity, and in order to have that card velocity, like, I need to burn a cantrip or something, and I'm oftentimes finding myself kind of running out. So I either, like, the tutor just sits in my hand until I have a way to tutor and then draw it, or I have to play it and then wait, which, that's, like, not the best thing in the world ever. So I've actually been slotting in Grim Tutor more now, because I want even if I have a harder time casting it, I have found it more important to, like, not telegraph what I'm doing, or not needing the extra card to get it. Especially in Thrasios, non-Tymna decks, essentially. Because with Thrasios and Tymna, you have so much card draw in the command zone. But, like, I'm actually more talking, like in Kess, essentially, kind of. Because I don't have, like, Crom, I don't have Tymna, I don't have Thrasios, I don't have those other card advantage engines always on hand.
No, absolutely. And I mean, the dangers of waiting a turn cycle when people know you've just tutored is like a game of Russian roulette, because somebody has, a Winds of Rebuke for their dockside or any of your problem artifacts.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah, everybody's running Winds now, and so it's like, every time I use it, it's like, and it's not even if I'm picking, like, a bad window to do it, which, I mean, some percent of the time I do, but, like, I'm just like, oh, this thing has been rotting in my hand for 4 turns because I have no way to actually, like, play it and then draw it. Or play it, draw it, and then do what I need to do. Whereas, like, at least, like, with, like, D-Tutor, or, honestly, mostly I've been slotting in, Diabolic Intent in that slot, and then up in the creature count by, like, 1 or 2, like, playing, like, not Blood Pet, but, what am I, like, Cloud of Fairies in one slot, and then, oh god, what's the other one? There's another, sometimes it'll be Blood Pet, sometimes it's, like, Skirk Prospector or something, sometimes.
Gotcha.
Just,
yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that. And then, there's also been people testing more of the transmute tutors.
Yeah, like Muddle.
The Shred Memory.
Yeah, Shred Memory, Muddle, yeah.
Has been a big one I've seen people talking about.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and move down to the instance. There's really not anything super notable in there. I mean, pretty much everything's pretty standard amongst every list. I see that the mid-range list has incorporated Brain Freeze now. That's kind of interesting, because it's definitely less stormy, right?
Right. But I think it takes up a small amount of space to open up another combo line.
Yeah, it's an easy slot. And I'm actually surprised that, given you're actually still running Dramatic Reversal, I mean, I love it, and I still do personally as well, but I'm just kind of shocked at this point that it's still in the core list. I have found it to be actually one of the best rituals, bar none, especially even under a breach. But, yeah.
I love it also for its synergy with Wishclaw. Being able to tutor twice in a turn, plus you reset all your rocks. Like, if you can't win off of that, then you're definitely missing some pieces from your deck.
Right? Yeah, for sure. Pretty much all the rocks are standard. Wishclaw's great. If you don't have it, get it, because it's only $1. Like, there's no reason not to.
Right.
I don't think there's anything contentious in the enchantments either, really. Like, if you're playing, maybe Copy Artifact is a little contentious at this point, but I
It's
don't know.
definitely falling out of favor, and I think that's just because we have such a high density now of good mana rocks,
Yeah.
good rituals, that we don't really need that high density anymore, and we're not really copying scepters as much anymore, especially in Kess, because there's no reason to. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's-
Because we don't have
I
that
do
drop.
want to talk about real quick Plunge into Darkness, because that's a card we get a lot of
Okay.
questions about.
I've actually pulled it from my list, to be honest.
And a lot of people are, and I definitely don't fault people for that. It's kind of a weird card. It's like Necropotence in trying to figure out like when do I dig just a little bit and when do I dig super deep, you know?
Right.
So for those who don't know, Plunge into Darkness is an instant speed for 1 and a black. It's choose one, sacrifice any number of creatures, and you gain 3 life for each sacrificed creature. We don't really care about that.
Right.
Or you can pay X life, then look at the top X cards of your library, put one of those cards into your hand, and remove the rest from the game. So on Explore, it's Impulse, right?
Yeah. 4 life, 2 mana, impulse.
At its ceiling, though, what you can do is if you're going for a win and you have Plunge in your hand, but not enough interaction, is you cast that Plunge and you pay, however much life you have left at the time, depending on what you're doing, and you can find that interaction to hopefully win you the game.
Hold on, I must stop you. How much ever life you have, -1, and minus how much life you need to activate abilities and cast spells to win.
Right.
We just had to put it out there because.
Yeah. I mean, there have been people who've done the math wrong, and they're like, "Oh, now I can't
Mm-hmm.
cast my Vamp Tutor, or now I can't cast Force of Will."
Right, I have seen that happen. My personal favorite is somebody's at like 3 life, and they go to Vamp Tutor and you counter squall
Oof.
them. So and you're like, or like no, it's I'm sorry, you they play Vamp Tutor, somebody else interacts, and then you counter squall the interaction. So like the Vamp Tutor still resolves or whatever, but they kill themselves. It was kind of one of those cute
Right.
little tricky things that you can get away with once in a while. But sorry,
Yeah, and I mean that's
derail you.
the definition of gotcha. That's
Yeah.
something to expect in this game. Is sometimes somebody's going to have just the perfect way to stop you, and there isn't anything you can do about it.
Nope, and it happens once in a while. So yeah, so you have another thing that's actually kind of useful with Plunge that I didn't really even think about till just now is you can do the black one and sacrifice like a Dockside or an Oracle to kind of reset it, and then you get 3 more cards deeper out of it too.
Exactly.
So that
The number of creatures in the deck has definitely increased with all these new additions. So
yeah,
having a creature out on the board that you don't need anymore or would serve you better in the graveyard, like getting your Dockside into the graveyard is sometimes the better play if you have something like Reanimate or you
yep,
have Breach.
yep, totally. I mean that's why all these decks are now running all those bounce spells because they just want to play Dockside, bounce Dockside, replay Dockside. You know what I mean? And reset
Right.
it over and over again as much as possible. Anything you want to talk about in the enchantments or lands before we go to the maybe board?
No, I think everything else is pretty self-explanatory.
Okay, yeah, fetch lands, on color stuff. There's that ancient tomb and that gemstone caverns we were talking about earlier. All right, so now we're down in the considering. So obviously we have Labman Jace. But there's a couple interesting ones in the creature section. We have Ghostly Pilferer and Nightscape Familiar. Why is Nightscape Familiar in here? Is that why you can have a creature with regeneration?
So that is for its ability to reduce the cost of your spells, and that's so what you're seeing in this considering is also some kind of like, hey, if you don't have the money to buy something like Imp Seal or Necropotence or Rhystic Study, here's the next best cards for the deck.
Right,
Here's things that you can slot in
Right.
without detrimenting the deck too much. And so Nightscape Familiar is great because a lot of times it will reduce the cost of at least 21 or 22 of your spells, which is about the sweet spot for a cost reduction.
And it's 43 cents, and Brawl costs $5 or $6, I think. He kind of wavers a little bit, depending on how soon he, last time he got printed or whatever.
Right, and he doesn't even make it into the final deck, so why spend the $5 when you can spend 40
Exactly. Right. And what's the Ghostly Pilferer for?
So that's kind of like a spicy tech against things like Underworld Breach, because whenever your opponents cast a spell from anywhere other than their hand, you get to draw a card. So what you're hoping is, as they're doing their breach thing, you're drawing cards hoping to find an answer to whatever it is they're doing.
Gotcha. Okay. It can also be used as a discard outlet, and you can also technically use it to draw cards if you attack with it as well. I've often included Ghostly Pilfer in like budget lists with Springleaf Drum, because I can use the Pilfer to make mana when I need it, and then it untaps, the drum untaps, and then I can tap them both again to make 1 mana, and then just tap a land or something for the second colorless to get a card draw off of it.
Yeah, which is always nice. Again, my favorite thing, drawing cards.
I would also like to petition that you guys add Mindblade Render to the maybe considering board.
I can actually do that right now. I don't know why it isn't there.
Because I have found it to 1, a 3/1 is pretty relevant body most of the time. It draws cards pretty consistently on its own. And if you ever are in a meta with Occam Adversary or Najeela, it tends to increase in value a lot, very quickly, actually. It's actually one of my favorite kind of like cheaper-ish like card draw, because it's pretty consistent.
Right, no, for sure.
I see Wedge's Mind's Desire here.
So, of course, we had to include the pet card. That goes back to what I was saying earlier, where a lot of times your opponents will just let you cast spell after spell and chain and chain and chain, waiting for you to cast that win, and then you cast something like Mind's Desire for like 6, let's say, which is not unheard of for us to get to at least 6. The only way they can stop that is specifically with Flusterstorm.
I mean, you can still just pay the 1.
Right, but they can counter the Mind's Desire, but it already makes the copies on the cast.
Yeah, the Storm Trigger goes on the stack already. So yeah, go on. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
So either way, you're going to get 3, 4, 5 instances of Mind's Desire, unless they have Flusterstorm.
Right, and even if they do, you can still pay for. Usually, you can pay for some copies anyway.
Right. And then my favorite thing to do is have Kess out and then cast it again, but now it's even more.
Have you ever cast a Mind's Desire with a Breach?
I haven't, but I want to, because I can imagine that Storm count gets crazy.
If you want to get a Storm boner sometime, do that. I mean, I've
never been set up for it.
I had a Breach in play. I cast Intuition, and then I forget why, but basically the line was just to manually storm off with Mind's Desire because of whatever. I forget exactly what it was at the time, but the end result was that I had to use the Mind's Desire at the time to be able to like get all the copies. This was before Pure was printed. Like, Breach was out, but Pure wasn't printed yet. And it was just like, cast it, get a bunch of copies, cast it again. Oh, God, it was great. Granted, it was, like, I got to do it one time, but, man, it was exciting.
That's all you need. Like,
yeah.
After you've cast, 16, 17 spells, what are they really going to do at that point?
Yeah, exactly. And then, I mean, I like them. Now, have you how have you found me Mnemonic Betrayal? I always found it a little meh,
It's
personally.
met in 90% of the metas.
Yeah, it seems like it's a card exactly good in like one high density wheel, high density turbo Nas meta, and is a little less exciting outside of that, personally.
It's better in homogenous metas. So where most of the decks you're going against play close to the same cards that you do, to where basically looking in their graveyards is like looking in yours.
Gotcha. And now you're paying 3 mana to just like have three of everything. Gotcha. Okay.
Right.
There's Jessica's Will, Grim Tutor. I'm so glad Grim Tutor got reprinted.
And the art is so much better.
Yeah, it is sweet. It is. Um, I've always found, and I have found Dark Petition to kind of be a little bit of a sleeper hit. It's actually really nice. Like, it makes the 3 black more times than I would care to admit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm trying to think if there's really anything else that's kind of contentious there, and I don't really like. I'm not sold Bifrost should be here, but I don't know.
Well, that's when we were seeing more of the stacks pieces.
Yeah, I found like Vandal Blast to be better, and then like the one with Replicate, because a lot of time
Flag something.
Shattering Spree,
That
but I tend to play like if I play against stacks decks, they tend to be actually like more like mid rangey blue based stacks versus like non-blue stacks for the most part, because I'm usually the only dumbass playing Blood Pod or Dodo.
Hey, I play Blood Pod.
I mean, yeah, I do too, but like not many people outside of a couple of us. By the way, I've got a hot new Tana and Timnit list I should share with you. I was talking to Lurker about it yesterday. I got to put it together, but it's fun. I'll tell you about it after we're done. We're getting down here.
I'm ready.
All right, so we're moving along to instance. Anything of note in here?
I think the two big things that used to be super popular and have since fallen out of favor is Hurkyl's Recall and Rebuild. Those used to be really great as pseudo rituals where you bounced all your mana rocks and then just recasted them.
Yeah, to help you generate more storm. So, funny thing. Especially my budget list, I still run Rebuild and I run Cloud of Fairies. I also run a card called Miscalculate, which is a 1 blue, 1 colorless counter spell unless they pay 2, and it has cycling of 2.
Interesting.
So, remember earlier how I was talking about how like I tend to slot in Labman in a lot of my Kess lists because I want the be able to pivot from Oracle to Labman, especially if I'm kind of got my opponents on like some type of gotcha. So what I like about the Rebuild in particular, and what I like about Cloud of Fairies is the cycling gives you an uninteractable draw effect.
Right.
That also can be used for other things outside of it. I don't run miscalculate. Is it miscalculate or miscalculation? Outside of budget lists, but I do run the other two pretty regularly. Sometimes Rebuild doesn't make the cut, but I wanted to bring them up because if you happen to tech in a Labman, having those types of effects is actually pretty useful. And the thing that's nice about Rebuild is that you can use it to bounce all your rocks and replay them, and then you can actually use with Breach and Calling of the Week, you can do where you can filter mana from black into other colors with Cloud of Fairies.
That's a good point and something I hadn't considered. It's also part of the big argument between Unearth versus Reanimate.
I do tend to run Unearth as well because I'm never really finding myself. Now, if I'm playing a budgetless list, I do want reanimate, but in like less than basically in any deck less that doesn't have like any deck that's running dual lands, Mox Diamond and Twister, I run reanimate. But anyone that doesn't, I usually run Unearth because I want that cycle ability.
Right. And then I think so. In the artifacts is where we're going to see another thing. So Jeweled Lotus, super popular card this year.
Yeah, but in Kess?
In some instances of Kess, it's great. Does it only get you 2 mana for her? Yes, but that's still 2 free mana to cast Kess. And so the consideration with that is the faster you get Kess out, the more likely you might be able to cast something like Deflecting Swat or Fierce Guardianship. That was the thought process there.
I don't
Not
really
a great
play
thought
those.
process.
I was gonna say I don't play SWAT and Fierce in Kess either.
Yeah,
I play Force Syndication, but
it was an experiment. Jeweled Lotus is still there because it is kind of like this okayish free mana ritual for getting Kess out if your games tend to go long and you're likely to cast her a second time.
Okay. I mean, I can see the validity in that argument. I personally have not found it. And mostly for the fact that it's only, like, if she was 2 colors, like Crom, Crom costs 5, but you're getting, like, you play, you get 2 colored pips and that, and you've got Crom now. Or if you play Land, Mox Diamond, Soul Ring, and that, like, you've got Crom on turn 1. So.
It's definitely better in the partner decks and in dual or single colored commanders.
Well, or at least commanders with like a really high colorless requirement too. That's kind of the other thing is like Kess is just very pip intensive, but hasn't like even if she was like Grixis and 2, I could see it, but just personally. So my next question is now that is there any like have you run Grinding Station at all? Like what do you think of it? Do you use it?
So I haven't played it.
Okay.
I know that Cole has played it a lot.
Cole
Fiddle has played it a lot as well. And they can't stop singing its praises. So I can admit it's a good card and it's good at what it does, but I tend to lean more towards the consult lines than the breach lines. And I think it does better if you like breach more.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. And I think that's kind of where you get your delineation. Like your consult lines kind of tend to be more of like the mid-range Kess, whereas like your breach lines tend to be more of like the stormy version of Kess. Does that kind of make sense?
Right. It's almost like there's 3 different tiers, right? So there's the traditional mid-range where it focuses more on consult. There's the stormier mid-range, which focuses on breach. And then there's the turbo Naz. And that's the balls to the wall, let me add Naz on turn 2.
Right. And just... Right. And then that's the one where they're playing the Jeweled Lotus, the Fierce, the SWAT, and all of that. Whereas like the mid-range breach may or may not. And then the mid-range consult probably isn't running SWAT and Jeweled Lotus, most likely, I would say.
Probably not. I mean, there's no reason to, because you expect to go to that later turn where getting Kess out isn't difficult at all.
Right. And then, so moving on to enchantments, there's some hot ones down here. That's for sure. I remember Redshift always being a big fan of Stranglehold. I didn't like it. I think
he still is. I think he just recently cut it, if I remember his list. It's just a nice, your opponents can't search your library. It's definitely less important now that we have opposition agent, though.
Yeah, I kind of found it waning under, like... I think it was better pre-Hulk, personally.
Mm-hmm.
I even cut it from Pod, actually. The 4 mana, I'm just like... every time I tap to play it, everybody just cast their Vamp Tutors anyway. So
Right.
but,
They shot everything out that they could, and then they played around it until they could get rid of it.
Right. I do love Steel Enchantment.
Again, helps me play my favorite card in Grixis, Smothering Tithe.
Yeah. It also, you can steal like people's Ristic studies with it, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. Taking Remoras, you can take
Sylvan Libraries. I love taking Sylvan Libraries.
That's a good one. Necropotent.
Yeah, you can. You can take Necro. You can also. There's a couple other like. I'm drawing a blank on what they are off the top of my head, but definitely taking a Sylvan Library or a Smothering Tithe is nice. And obviously taking a Necro and a Study and stuff is too. But I've even gone as far as to like try to steal like I played against Natux. He was playing Yidris. I tried to steal enchantment his counterbalance because like I like just had nothing. I'm like I can't win through it, so I either need to get it out of there. It was pretty funny.
Who knew that we were so bad at enchantment removal?
I mean, we have all those bounce spells, but they all cost 1 and 2. Like, I'm like, you know what? I want free counter matching.
Exactly.
You know, and then there's some of the obvious budget lands. I'm glad to see Tarnished Citadel is not in the core list, by the way.
Yeah, we have this huge density of good lands, like Tainted Pact lands, that Tarnished Citadel, like, yes, it is access to all your colors for unconditionally, but that 3 life is such a hefty toll as the game grinds on.
All right, you ready? You ready for the put them up? I got my second my second petition for you. Please, put Spire of Industry in Kess. Here's my argument. You run enough artifacts to support this card, Mox Opal, which requires you to have 3 artifacts in play. Spire is a rainbow land that dings you for 1, but also only requires 1 artifact in play. And if you don't have an artifact in play, it is not dead. It still makes colorless mana.
So it's funny because that's a card I've gone back and forth on for a while.
Really?
And I'm thinking, yes, because you're right. 99% of the time, it's going to be an unconditional rainbow land. But I was always hesitant because people tend to like to blow up my artifacts. And while, yes, it does still make a colorless mana, my color pips are always so color intensive that a lot of times I don't find an avenue to get that.
Well, my whole argument is that you're running enough effects to support Mox Opal, which has 3 times the requirement, and is completely dead without that requirement. But yet, Spire's not considered in the list. And on top of that, you also have Hull Breacher and Dockside now.
That's true. I didn't think about Hull Breacher, which also makes artifacts. I have been looking for something to slot in over Forbidden Orchard. I can't talk. Because just giving people creatures these days, especially with like Rogue Rack running around.
Yeah, with Roger running around, yeah. Well, it just like that gives them like things to sack to their Diabolical Intent, and then they can keep the more important stuff around.
Or Tevish.
Yeah, exactly. I always pull that out. I always put Spire in over Tarnished. But then Training Center got printed, and that kind of bumped it. but I still think that, like, I run it in all of my lists, and I have never been sad. Like, I can't even count on one hand the amount of times that I've needed it to make color mana and it couldn't. Like, even when it hasn't made colored mana, I've still been able to use it to cast my rocks or pay for colorless. Like, it's never, like, outright boned me. You get what I'm saying?
No, absolutely.
But getting punched for one, or even Exotic Orchard sometimes is not. I had a game where I could only make red, green, and white with Exotic Orchard, and I was like, well, the pod was Heliod, Winota, and Sylvala.
Oh, yeah.
Which you would think I would do great in. Except I was last. And all the stacks came down first. And I can't stop at all.
Those all run like a decent amount of creatures, so you're probably getting smacked in the face because you probably had no blockers.
No. I just got mowed over. I like board wipe, and they didn't care. They just like redeployed. I was like, okay.
Yeah, the cute board wipe you got there.
Right,
Here's
yeah.
all my stuff back.
Yeah. I played against 2 Kess players one time with Rurik Thar. And they had to pay 14. I was like, they had to pay like some 18 life to kill Thar. It was like, because they had to tutor up the Toxic Deluge, take the 6 for casting the Deluge, plus pay the 6 life to kill him. Oh, it was funny.
Gosh.
Yeah.
And so, speaking of board wipes, and I'm sad we didn't touch on this sooner, is that they seem to be going out of style.
Yeah. So, I personally, like, my 2 favorite board wipes are Deluge, and then the one that kills everything with Horsemanship.
Rolling Earthquake.
Rolling Earthquake. And the reason why I like Rolling Earthquake, even over Pyroclasm, is because we can make a lot of colorless mana pretty easily. And I want my board wipes to scale. And I have often found, especially since Ikoria, that killing X3s is much more relevant than killing X2s these days. And I want my board wipes to kill X3s. So I used to play Pyroclasm and I used to play Massacre, but I took them out. But I still run Rolling Earthquake and I still run Toxic Deluge most of the time. Unless I'm playing a Stormy Kess, then it's, then we go Burr. But most of the time I'm playing mid-range. Like, I don't even play... Go on, I'm sorry.
Driving it is people are looking for those things that they can cut to put more things in to make them go Burr.
Yeah. But I've actually kind of reverted back to the mid-range. And I have a good time with it. I like the Yahennies, it just costs 4. It's kind of rough.
It is, but then you get to cast something off of it, which is always nice.
Yeah, like casting like a Grim Monolith off it or something is kind of cool, or a D-Tutor or something, but still, yeah. But I actually prefer Rolling Earthquake over most of the other board wipes most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only $2, which is nice.
Right. Okay. I'm loving the Commander Legends reprints. It's definitely made a lot of things more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny, when you look at how these budget lists have evolved, you'll see that things have just flipped. So cards that used to be too expensive to be in the deck are now in the deck because they got a reprint, and now all the things that were previously in the deck that haven't gotten reprints got pushed out because now it's just
too expensive. Right. Like if you would have bought Chrome Mox in August, you would have paid $25 for it.
Easily.
It's 40. If you would have bought Mana Crypt over the summer, you would have paid 60.
Mm-hmm.
And when those get reprinted, like last month, or not last month, 3 months ago now, but Mana Drain was down, it dropped to 55 when it got reprinted in Commander Legends.
Hmm.
So one of the big things about being able to like build your core is even like so that's like one of the things kind of I like to advocate is like you start out with your $500 list and you watch for when those cards get reprinted and the prices drop, and then you're like, oh well, I need Chromox because that's going to go in every Kess list I got. You know, oh, I need Mana Vault that's going to go like right now with Time Spiral getting reprinted. Uh, get those Gemstone Caverns because they ain't gonna get cheaper. Like, now's
Right.
your chance.
And Mox Opal is a perfect example of the opposite, where, you know, over the summer, right before it got banned, you were spending $70, $80 on it. Now it's
Yep,
at 30.
30, 37, 35. Yeah. So it's a good one to pick up, even if you don't have like, and I mean, because if you're running 16, 17 artifacts anyway, just pull the dumpiest, crappiest one and throw that in, and you're good. Like, so that was kind of the thing. Like, I kind of was, I have like a secret list that I don't show people. But what it is it's actually my original budget list, and I have like slowly like bought a card for it, like when they drop,
Mm-hmm.
and it then it turned into my $1,000 list. Is what happened because I was able to like buy that card when it dropped, buy that card when it dropped, buy that card when it dropped. You know what I mean? And or like if I found like a precon at the if I found the Dockside precon, the Elsha one at
Mm-hmm.
Walmart, you know, and I was like, bam, you know, now I got a Dockside and that kind of stuff. And it wound up turning into the 1K list once, like basically within a year, because I was able to just kind of pick and snag everything as we went along. So, well, let's see what else we got. We got tokens. Yeah, I don't think we need to talk about tokens. Um, and that's most of the considering. Um, let's see. Is there any other Kess related things we should discuss?
So the biggest question, right? Why
Mm-hmm.
play Kess out of any of the other Grixis shell commanders?
You want me to
And
answer that, or do you want to answer it?
well, I'm going to give what we've discussed in the Discord, and then you can give your opinion on the matter too. Um,
Okay.
and that is, she is one of the most resilient of the commanders. If you stop her from winning early on, her ability to come back from that and either reuse what's already in the graveyard or recast your draw spells and your tutors to get you to that next win attempt is, it surpasses any of the other commanders. Whereas ones like Jaleva, she allows for more greedy keeps, right? You don't have to necessarily multiply. And Nala's great for people who like puzzles. I personally can't wrap my head around half of the lines that they have in their deck.
I
So
mean, they all revolve around
more
Spellseeker.
right.
Not
Uh,
really. There's more to it. I'm being hyperbolic.
and then of course the other popular one right now is Tevish and Crom, which are great card advantage engines in the command zone. Right.
Not saying they're not great. I'm just saying they're fine.
And they're both expensive. It's not even just like one you can cheat out super quick and then, slowly bring out the other one. It's, you got to
Right.
pick.
Yeah, I mean, granted, you got a Jeweled Lotus in that list now, and that helps, but man, God. Like, whew. And I've seen the Tavesh Crom list do well. You know, I've even I've goldfished Big Black Crom a few times,
Mm-hmm.
but oh, that's my
I
name
love
for the
that deck
deck.
name.
Big Black Crom. That's what. um, but yeah, so like for me personally, so the one thing I like about Kess versus um all the other popular Grixis commanders is that while it, as far as like comparing it to all the other Grixis commanders, it does everything pretty well, but also doesn't have like a ton of like, since it doesn't excel at any one area so much, it doesn't like falter at any area too much. It's just kind of middle of the road. It's super resilient, which is good, like you said. The ability to just go tutor win with your commander, like, cannot be understated. The amount of games that I have played Kess, just had Kess in play to keep me from dying, and then top decked any tutor that's relevant. Didn't matter what it was, just any relevant tutor. Cast it, flash it back with Kess to get both halves of my Consult Oracle, and then just be able to do that. And sometimes that's even just literally just top decking Consult. You just like play Consult. And like I was mentioning earlier, and do that. And that's what's nice about Kess. The other thing that's nice about Kess is that Kess can essentially block, outside of Crom, can block most creatures in the in our end of the format. Most. So it helps kind of stop that, like, that chip damage. Like, as awesome as Jaleva is, she's only a 1/3. You never cast a Nala, because you just never do. Because why would you
never
never
need
cast?
to.
Well, you never need to, but also, like, you just never. So you really, like, Anala is only for her Eminence ability. Jelly is great because you can get the spells off of her, and she's actually a win con in your command zone. Like, you can just bounce her over and over again and replay her. But also, she doesn't, like, she's not great utility, like, other than, like, if you, like, high roll the exiles and you get to attack with her. Whereas with Kess, like, the downside of Kess is that he's a card advantage engine, or she's a card advantage engine. Because if you don't have, like, that's the other thing that's nice, is, like, even if you don't have, like, tutors or, like, outs, like win cons in your graveyard, you have cantrips. Now you're just recasting your ponders and your get probes and your sleight of hands and stuff like that to help get you going. You can recycle the board wipes. Like, she does a lot.
Wheeling a second time.
Right. Yeah. Wheeling a second time. Get that whole breacher. Oop! I got a wheel in my graveyard. Gotcha. Like, stuff like that. And that's why I think she's my favorite Grixis commander, and I think I would dare to say she's the best out of the straight Grixis. Like, if you start adding in a fourth color, then we can have a different conversation. But, like, and it's not to say that the other ones aren't good. I just think overall she's the most well-rounded. She provides you with a play pattern and strategies that make results replicatable relatively consistently. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
like, Anala's good.
Absolutely.
She's just got a really high skill cap.
Yeah, they talk sometimes in the Anala channel, and I have to mute it because it hurts my brain.
Right, and I mean, I've been sitting here talking to you for about an hour, and it's not like you're not intelligent.
I mean, that's a spicy take.
Okay, fair enough. I don't think you got to be one of the admins on the Mean Girls server by not being intelligent. I know Wedge and I know Redshift.
So, speaking of that, Wedge has actually stepped down. He's taking a little break from the Grixis Mean Girls server. Well, he's working on Conquest. So
yeah, Conquest, he has been playing a lot of Conquest.
Brainchild right now. So I'm curating things over in the server now until he is comfortable with that, or I may just have it forever. We'll see.
Yeah, I remember me and Redshift used to play on Play DH a lot together back in the day.
He's just been busy.
He's so grumpy. It's great. I love him. He can get grumpy at me anytime he wants. Let me tell you one of my first games at Redshift. This was when I was transitioning from high power to CDH, right? Mm-hmm. And I was the asshole in my group that always had like the OP casual decks. Just because I owned every card and I played a lot of Legacy and Vintage. Like, even when I powered it down, it was still too interactive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I played Kami of the Crescent Moon. Do you know what that does?
Yes.
Okay, it was straight up a mono blue Howling Mine deck that won with Mind Over Matter and Otherworld Atlas, but ran Mana Drain, Force of Will, every counter match. You know, I was running foil because I was always having so many cards in hand.
Mhm.
And in mid power and in like high power, a Howling Mine deck actually kind of plays contrarian, where what you're actually doing is you're overloading the opponent's hands with the cards because they don't have a low enough CMC to really take advantage of it, because they just have a bunch
Mhm.
of clunky like 5, 6, and 7 drops.
Mhm.
So it doesn't matter how many cards you feed them necessarily, because they can't use them. And even if they can, they're only really casting one spell a turn, and you have enough counter magic to kind of stem that tide, right?
Right.
So he's playing. I don't think it was Shuffle Hulk at the time. I think it was Breakfast Hulk. And then I was playing with my buddy Adam, who was playing Baral, and we were playing with Scott, who I don't remember what Scott was playing at the time. Maybe SRAM. It was back when SRAM was still on the DB. Yeah, back when the rocks were soft, dude.
The
And
Cheerios deck.
yeah, and I won the game. The spread was so pissed. So pissed. He like went off on me. And you know what? He was right. And because of that, like, because of that crusty old man who's actually like 10 years younger than me, I put Kami down. I picked up Tassiger. And then I annoyed him with Tassiger for the next 3 months. But at least I was playing a CH deck.
Hey,
And then I finally switched from Tassiger to, like, I did not want to play Thrasios and Timna, like, no matter what. And then finally I did, and I was like, oh, they just do everything better than Tassiger, at least at the time. Sinestro's new version is really good, compared to the older version at the time, the season past.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was just kind of funny. And then I switched on, and then I found out that he was the guy who had the Kess build, and I built it, and pretty much fell in love from there. Like, I like Kess is one of my favorite. That was why it was the first budget deck I built, because it was the one I knew the best.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that's.
I'm sorry. Go on.
I was just gonna say, like, that's where I started, and it was funny because him and Wedge definitely showed me a lot of patience, because I was definitely that new player who was like, every time a card came out in the colors, I was like, well, what about this card? Or what about this card? And this card seems good. And they're like, oh, sweet summer child. Like,
Yep.
yes, they're okay, but this is why they're trash.
Right. Totally. Yeah. Well, and Wedge too. Like, Wedge definitely, like, get me in the Grixis. That's why I was like, wait a minute. What I liked about his list was the second. I didn't pay attention to any other card. I was like, you're running Mind's Desire, because I used to play it in Old Extended.
Mm-hmm.
Back before I think it was before he got banned, or some version of Old Extended. I think back a long time. I've been playing Magic a long time. So you're now in charge of the Grixis Mean Girls Discord. Is that primarily where people can find you?
There's there. I'm in the Moxfield Discord. I'm in the Budget CDH Discord as an admin, as you so graciously have bequeathed on me.
You help out a lot. Thank you.
And I'm also in the Into the North podcast.
Discord as well,
not
right?
podcast, Discord. That one.
Now, where do you play? Can people play with you anywhere online? Or do you play mostly offline?
No, I play a lot on Spell Table, because the primary people that I used to play with. So I used to live in California, and then I recently moved to Alaska. And let me tell you, the CADH scene out here is like non-existent.
Yeah. So when you say you play on Spell Table, do you just play over Spell Table, or do you play on the Spell Table Discord? What I'm trying to get at
over Spell Table.
Right. What I'm trying to get at is, if somebody wanted to maybe play a game with you online, is there a place you frequent that they could play with you online? Because especially, we got COVID and webcams now.
Yeah, I mean, I would say definitely look me up on the Mean Girls Discord. That's the one I
Okay.
spend 99% of my time on.
Okay.
I am. If you ping me in any of the servers I'm in, though, I will definitely answer.
Yeah, yeah. I just didn't know. Like a lot of people play on PlayDH or on Game Server or Nexus or Commander's Vault or one of the one of the 2 dozen content creators like the Spike Feeders, Flame of Power, or Tryhards. There's like the CH Brazil, CHTV, like all of those servers all have like little play groups that play on them. So I didn't know if maybe you played on one of those or something as well. Okay.
You know who I've played against who's absolutely hilarious?
Who?
Harry and his Two Kings deck.
Harry and his 2 Kings deck.
Yes. So he has a Tyrannos and
Tyros?
yes, and it's a group hug deck, and
Yeah, we were
somehow
talking
he
about
always wins with it.
Because I've helped him. I didn't help him with that list. I looked at the list and I showed it. I have one as well. It's a little dated at this point, but yeah, we were talking about it one day. I forgot about that list. Yeah, that was.
So if you ever get the opportunity to play against Harry, like it's a great time every time.
I will try to make that happen because I should. I do need to build a non-CH deck to play against him though, which currently I don't have any of. So, but all right. Well, I think we should at least get this officially wrapped up. So, Cricket, thanks for coming out. Everybody can find you on the Grixis Mean Girls Discord, or they can come find you on the Moxfield Discord or on the CH Budget Brews. I will leave a link to the Grixis Mean Girls Discord in the notes in the description, as well as a link to the core list and your personal list and your budget list as well, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Just so that way people can have resources for reference later if they would like. So, thanks again, and everybody have a good night and good talking to you. See you later.
Thanks, guys.